All right, I'm going to call us to order for our Committee of the Whole meeting Monday, September 17th. I want to welcome everybody. Thank you guys for being here. And I'd like to turn it over to Councilman Carl Hudson for the invocation and pledge.
Let's pray. Our most gracious Heavenly Father, thank you for allowing us to be here tonight, Lord, to conduct the business of the county. Give us wisdom. Lord, give us the ability to make right decisions. And Lord, we just praise your name for everything that you do for us. In Jesus Christ's name, amen.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you, Councilman Hudson. The only thing that we're going to do different, I don't think we're going to do item number B, right?
That's correct. Number or letter? Letter B.
Letter B.
With all the rain,
the school teacher come out in you. With all the mud, we decided it might be better to not do that because I know how rambunctious Councilman Hendricks gets.
We'll play in the mud.
Right, we'll play in the mud. Let's start with our Green Crescent Trail log number 104.
Yes, sir. We've got Chad here with the Green Crescent Trail. He has a brief presentation he wanted to present to council. With that being said, I'll turn it over to Chad. You can get started.
Actually, Heidi's going to
Well, I was just going to introduce Chad. I'm Heidi Williams. I serve on the board of the Friends of the Green Crescent Trail. We are a 501c3. We were founded about 4 years ago. We have turned over our board about one and a half times since we were started, with Chad as our founding president, and he is still our fearless leader. The goal of the Green Crescent Trail is to create connectivity and quality of life in and around Clemson. And what we wanted to do today was to give you a little bit of a framework for what that will look like. We have a sizable feasibility study that Chad is going to give you the Cliffs Notes on. But the one thing that we wanted to come here today to say to you was thank you for funding our feasibility study. Using Pickens County Recreation Funds for the bulk of the feasibility study funding, and then with some support from the City of Clemson and the Township of Central, we were able to pay to have that study done, and it sets forward about 40 miles worth of trails that are designed to connect the many, many assets that are in and around the greater Clemson area. Everybody loves Clemson. It's a great place to live. We've got boardwalks, we've got parks, we've got lakes, we've got beaches, we have a great public university, but what we don't have is a way to get to those things without hopping in a car and getting there. So I'm going to turn it over to Chad. He is going to walk you through a brief version of it, and we would like to make ourselves available to you all for questions tonight, but also moving forward. We have had a series of meetings with the City of Central, with the City of Clemson, and most recently with the State DOT. And everyone has been really responsive in terms of continuing the conversation. So we hope this will be the first, not the last time that we're able to talk with you about what our hopes and our dreams are for the Green Crescent Trail.
Thank you. So I'm going to repeat a little bit about what Heidi said, but the first thing being what our mission is as an organization. We're a nonprofit, and we're citizens of Pickens County. Primarily Central and Clemson is kind of where a lot of it started, but we see it sort of as a bigger idea and bigger trend that we've taken inspiration from other towns, particularly in Greenville and Travelers Rest and some other areas where pedestrian and bicycle infrastructure has made a really big difference in quality of life. And we sort of include in that any public spaces. We see our mission as making our area a better place to live, to work, to play, to study. Southern Wesleyan University and Clemson University being a big part of our town. So we are real big believers that this kind of public infrastructure leads to all sorts of other positive effects economically, tourism, quality of life for people who live there. And so that's why we're really excited about it. The vision that we see ourselves trying to accomplish in the big picture and short term is to connect all the places that are already here. We live here. We feel like our county is amazing. But like Heidi said, one of the big deficiencies that we've identified and a lot of other people in our visioning studies have identified is that, for example, you can live in a house and there's a park a quarter of a mile away from you And I have 5 and 7-year-old kids who go to Clemson Elementary, and for us to get there to that park is not safe, and for the most part, for most people. And so we want to make those kind of small connections a lot easier for people to make. We want to make the connections to other kinds of infrastructure like the CAT bus and other alternative transportation easier. And so the vision we have for that is not just trails, but there are different kinds of trails. Sometimes it'll be an actual trail off the road, like you would see with the Swamp Rabbit Trail, the Doodle Trail. That's sort of the Cadillac version of some of these trails. But you also have greenways, complete streets, so sometimes having a bike lane or better sidewalks might be the prescription for certain areas. And then also not even connecting to public transit. So making sure that if it's a student or somebody doesn't want to take a car, there's a way for them to get to these places, whether it's just for pleasure and recreation, which a lot of people do, or in some cases commuting and actually getting people off the road. I know in Clemson and Central in particular, when students come back, it's like a mini Atlanta sometimes in terms of traffic jams, and with the growth that's been going on, we see this as even more important because of just the transportation infrastructure, and people sitting in line for cars where they're trying to go is a big challenge at the moment. So the feasibility study, which thanks to you was done and finished in 2016, and so it was the funding was majority contributed by you. The town of Central also contributed some money. Clemson, City of Clemson, and Southern Wesleyan as well. Clemson University was closely associated with what we were doing. They have their own sets of studies they were working on, but we had them on the feasibility study committee, and we're working very closely with them as well. And the general results of what we asked the people at the Alta Planning and Design who did the study for us, we had charrettes and local town committee meetings and we tried to get as much feedback as we can about, number one, just what are the assets in the community that everybody thinks are the most important. And it came down to things like parks, downtown areas, Central and Clemson downtown, universities, elementary schools, middle schools, high schools, historical and cultural attractions, also local libraries, and the experimental forest in Clemson was identified as a really important connector thing that we needed to connect. And then also just all of those items to our local neighborhoods and residential areas. This is just showing the numbers that the Pickens County Recreation Fund dollars funded the bulk of the $55,000 total study. And I'll give you a brief sort of overview of what some of the study broke the entire area down into segments, mainly road segments. So I'm going to show you some just pictures and kind of visioning of what some of these segments could look like. And there's obviously a lot more details. I'll be happy to go into some more specific details of each of these segments. So this is on Highway 93 between Central and Southern Wesleyan. And for the town of Central, as we did the shreds and talked to people in the community, and the feasibility study committee identified this stretch between downtown and connecting to the entrance to Southern Wesleyan as being one of the most important within the town of Central. And this is actually a utility easement currently, but they had some vision of what that could look like, making a connection there, and what the Southern Wesleyan has been very supportive. It's been their president, their leadership team was very excited about the concept, and they had their own plans within their campus to connect to something like this. And the town of Central has done some engineering studies, identified which property easements would have to be, if there's some landowner property easements, but also the DOT and where that would have to be. But this is just an example of what that could look like in that area. Downtown Central, so coming up on Church Street to the main intersection there. In this case, there was calling for some beautification, but also protected bike lanes on the side, and continuing to improve sidewalks. And this connection would go all the way down to past Walmart to the bridge over Highway 123. And there's actually another big connection that would go all the way back to Clemson in a big loop. So down the road, there's some even bigger connections, but one of the most important ones here was in downtown Central. So moving on kind of past Central, so the Highway 93 between Central and Clemson is another really important segment. So many of the commuter traffic for students going to Clemson, and also faculty and staff and just other people who work in the area, comes on Highway 93. And a lot of the future growth and development is going to also go that way. So part of the envisioning there was there's there's a really wide DOT easement on 93. And this is one of the main projects. When we met with DOT, we wanted to make sure we understood when their repaving schedule was, which is far out into the future, unfortunately. But it's so making crosswalks more accessible, there's actually enough space to do a restriping at some point where you could still meet DOT regulations for lane widths, but increase the size of bike lanes on either side. So that's sort of a first level project, that one of our first projects we want to work on Highway 93. But then eventually we also want to have a side path, which would be an 8 to 10 foot wide path on the right side here, in this case, going from Clemson towards Central, and have that also be a place that's completely off the road, because one of the main messages we got from the team that did the study for us was that you don't want to just make this a trail or a path or connectivity for people who wear spandex and ride their bikes. That's a very small minority of the people who use these trails. It's typically people, they want to make sure it's between 8 years old and 80 years old. Anybody who wants to go out and walk can feel safe. And for the most part, you have to have these side paths where you're completely off the road. So if I have my little 5-year-old teeter-tottering on her bike, I don't feel like as a parent she's going to run into the road. And the bike lanes can work for a college student commuting, not as much for my 5-year-old, or if I go out there with my grandmother and we're walking along on the path. So that's kind of you can see the whole picture here of what different types of paths we're hoping to implement. This is Berkeley Drive, so going between Issaquena Trail all the way to Highway 93, another important corridor for us. And there's already an interesting there's a space here as well. It's a DOT road, and but the envision would be to have a raised side path and have it again protected from the road. And I actually live off of this road, and I walk and bike my kids to school every morning on this route. So it's a little dicey at the moment, but it has a lot of potential. Pendleton Road, so going between past Max Drive-In and kind of between Clemson and Pendleton. This is kind of a view of one segment of that. And again, have improved sidewalks on one side and have an 8 to 10 foot path on the other side. So all of that is the sort of very brief Cliff Notes version of what our vision is. And but what we're working on currently, we're a small volunteer team. We're trying to increase the number of people who help us out. But we have 3 main goals and ways we think we can help implement the vision that I just showed you. One of those is through political advocacy, of just being in touch with all the relevant stakeholders and making sure the plan, which was adopted by Central and Clemson, is actually just always in the consciousness of people who are working on roads, everybody, so there's just an awareness of that it's out there. And that's one of the things we hope we could continue to be an ear to you and a resource because plenty of these routes are going to be on county roads. And so if we can be in touch with you about when there are county projects, making sure that we're communicating and maybe connecting you with the towns, and making sure everybody's aware and on the same page about everything in our feasibility study. Also, promotions and communications has been a lot of what we've done, of just talking to people locally, educating them about what routes are already there, what sidewalks are there. We're going to be doing walking and biking to school in October, both at Central Elementary and Clemson Elementary. So that's the kind of things we like to do in the community. And then resource development in terms of just helping with the funding. It's an expensive project. Any infrastructure funding is expensive. And so we want to have a list of resources of say we understand which grants are available, national, state level, and make sure we're on top of what's available, what's out there. And then whenever we all get together to do some of these, actually do some of the legwork as well to help out with that. So is there any, I think that's, making progress. It's slow progress a little bit here and there, but last year we had a big celebration. The pedestrian bridge and Berkeley Drive is one of the kind of main connector points on Berkeley Drive that I shared, and so it's that pedestrian bridge was dedicated right next to Clemson Elementary last year, and the use of that, I just kind of anecdotally, we'd like to do a study, but at least it looks like 4 or 5 times more kids walking, biking to school just from that area from what we've seen. And so it's been just that little tiny segment. It's been very successful, and we'd like to expand that and do that more in more areas. And so that's one of our first steps. Anything I missed, Heidi, or want to add to?
So that was a really great event, by the way, and it was a really awesome celebration of the work that we've been doing, but more importantly, the work that City Council and the Mayor of Clemson had also been doing, and our county council as well. We were able to bring the community together with our elected and appointed officials and really celebrate a win for the community. And it was tremendous how many people turned out for that. I mean, we had hundreds of people on that bridge. At this moment of panic, oh man, I hope this thing is well made because it is packed. There was nowhere to walk on it. And we organized that on behalf of the city. That was something that we were able to do. They reached out to us and said, can you make this happen? And all the mayor had to do was show up with a big old smile on his face and his jeans on and his orange shirt, and we just had a great time. So we look forward to those types of collaborations as well. We want to do as much as we can to make the work that you guys do a celebration, and we feel like we've put a lot of hard work into the last couple of years. Since the feasibility study was completed, we have vetted a lot of concerns. We have gained a lot of feedback, and at this point, we feel like we have great buy-in to this project, which makes it a great time, we feel like, for our elected officials to come in and make it a part of your planning and your collective consciousness. So we look forward to being able to support you and help you.
That bridge was brought up on the 2024 plan that the Clemson Planning Commission worked on. And I know there were some folks who said they didn't really think it was necessary, but then once it was put there, everybody realized that it helped the children.
And it was a barrier. It was a visible barrier between so many neighborhoods and the school, and the neighborhoods on the other side of the school. The best part of that ribbon cutting and bridge dedication was that the elementary school students were invited to participate in an essay contest. And the winners were allowed to stand up and read their essay, and a third grader essay is just a paragraph or so, but it was great. They got to talk about in their own words why having that bridge was so meaningful to them, and it was really, really great to hear it in their own words. It does make an impact. It improves quality of life for even our youngest citizens.
And anecdotally, I'll just give you some examples. I wish I had pictures to show you if I was more prepared, but a lot of kids are going to school on their own on this bridge now. And I know 2 years ago, it was just unthinkable. So I watched little, fourth graders come in on their bikes from their neighborhood across the bridge, going in, and maybe the first day of school, or first day or two of school, their parents are going with them, but I mean, you just don't see that. I don't think you see that as often anymore, and I think that safety factor is one of the main emphasis we're trying to get forward. And the other thing we learned from that is how important with this particular trail system is different than some of the other ones. It's not the same as the Doodle Trail. It's not the same as the Swamp Rabbit, and that we've got to get some very small segments on the ground, even if that means sometimes having a little gravel trail going along for 1.5 miles instead of trying to get the whole thing done at one time. Getting a bridge, getting a 1 mile segment where people can start using it and actually seeing that, hey, and see how many people use this segment for a lower cost up front. But even those little segments, getting them on the ground, make a big difference. And so that's been our strategy down the Central as we talked to them, the city of Clemson, is let's just get some low-hanging fruit, get that done first. And then it's a really big project in terms of the whole scope, but every time I think we get another segment done, I think the people who live near it tend to be happy with it and ecstatic about it and want to do more. So that's part of our strategy.
So where are y'all at as far as actually getting the physical stuff done?
So this fall, our goal in Central, the Highway 93 route in Central was our #1 priority, and the town applied for a grant last year that they didn't get. And so getting that grant would have helped them, I believe, get part of that Highway 93 off segment done. But the other thing in Central we want to do this fall is there are already some sewer easements that the town of Central has where they can, right near the Central Clemson Rec Center, where they could put gravel down, have trails there, make some loops near the Central Clemson Rec Center. And so we hope that's going to be a first kind of ribbon cutting in Central in 2018. And then in Clemson, the most important kind of first one is getting a restriping on Highway 93 and Berkeley Drive. It's about we've asked the city planner in Clemson, it seems to be about a $300,000 to $400,000 project between both roads. But it would involve the DOT permitting. The DOT doesn't have any plans to restripe, so it's going to have to be they tell us, a local project. But that's the most low-hanging, the one we want to work on first in Clemson.
It's a great idea, consider congestion increasing due to population down there. It's a nightmare, as you say.
It's getting huge. Traffic every morning, every 4 o'clock on Highway 123 is kind of a nightmare at the moment.
Now, that one Berkeley, does that go by Patrick Square?
It goes nearby. Issaquena goes by Patrick Square. There are some neighborhood connections that get to Patrick Square that we'd love to get through some of the neighborhoods. There's already some trails that are not city trails yet, but we would love to connect to Patrick Square, to Berkeley Drive, to Clemson Elementary. That would be a goal as well.
Have y'all reached out to your local delegation on that striping?
Gary Clary, we met with recently. Yes.
That's who you need to push on.
Okay.
And they encouraged us to meet with the state DOT,
Yes.
so now we have to punt back
Your
to them.
avenue is through your representation. It's all political.
Okay.
So you put the pressure on him,
All right.
that's how you get it done.
Well, and I don't know if you saw Trey on your way here, but the Southern Wesleyan cross country team was running through
I come a
the
different
campus.
way, but I know, I've run that course before.
Yeah, and they're just mowing it, right? And so that's a lot of what we're doing now. You know, when we see an opportunity for a trail, we will work together, whether it's the mayor of Central bringing his mower out and mowing down a stretch of
Volunteers,
grass,
volunteers
or,
out there.
or the city itself. But we call them Stomp the Trails, and that's been a lot of fun. You know, we just get people out there so that they can see and feel what it would be like if there was a permanent trailway there.
The other thing we have to do, signage. We're in Clemson. Clemson's funded $20,000 in their budget last year. Actually, we're going to use it this year for signage and wayfinding within the city. And so we have 6 kiosks that we're putting in the next month that are going to have maps that show a lot of the existing infrastructure. So here are sidewalks here. You can already use these. Here's Berkeley Drive. It's not a perfect trail yet, but this is the segment. Here's how you get from here to there. And so we think having some just maps and signs and safety signs and some crossings would be a big help, just as a first on the ground type thing.
Are you applying for the grants, or do you primarily using it through the city or through other organizations?
So what we did in Central is we met with, I'm going to call it the wrong thing, but we met with the organization that writes the grant for us. I don't think it was ACOG, but it was something similar to that.
GPAT?
Clemson's GPAT,
Central's
Yeah.
But they may have been ACOG.
I think it was
I
ACOG.
think it was ACOG.
That was I thought that was the grant, wasn't it? That they applied for?
Yeah.
So my question would be, are they going to apply for it again? next
Yes.
year?
Yes, they are. And so, and they've been told that even that process, that doing it once and then doing it again is sort of part of the routine. But we also know that there were some grants that were awarded to Clemson previously. So they try to collaborate where Clemson will apply for something one year and then Central will apply for something else. And so we helped them with some of their grant writing on that. We met with the city, their town administrator, with their guy who works with all of their maps, and then the folks who write the grants on their behalf, and even with Duke to talk about, we had money set aside from them to help with some of the lighting along that. So once the trail goes in, they said, well, we'll pay the money to put up some decorative lighting there. So we've got a lot of things in motion, but it's a lot of money and it's a big project. And so we're just trying to take it in steps and bite it off in chunks and just make sure that when there are efficiencies to be had, whether that's with a DOT restriping program or a county repaving program, that we're making ourselves accessible to be able to help you guys do what needs to be done to make it a better stretch of road. And if we can leverage private dollars to help with that, those are certainly relationships that we also have in place, and we have people lined up for when trail starts to go on the ground.
It seems to me that some of those programs have been approved for other counties,
Yeah, they have.
cities. Something very similar to this.
I'm also wondering about what we heard about on the federal level. I don't know if the call to senator or congressman may help with funding on that too.
Well, and so what we've been told about applying for some of the federal funding is that the restrictions on it are so cumbersome in terms of who can actually do the work out there, that it makes it more expensive than if you were to just try to find private dollars to fund it. Like, it just sort of inflates the price tag of getting the trail on the ground. So we've been encouraged to at least try to look locally at first.
There's a safe route to school, I think, except and it might go through the state, I'm not sure, but there's some separate funding from this normal TAP funding, I think, that was safe routes to school. And so we've also, part of our job we're trying to do is just we have an intern that we just got for this fall as a student whose job is just going to be continually updating our grant sheet and just saying what are grants that might apply to trails associated with what we're doing, and then continually have that updated when the deadlines are for applying. And to answer your question, though, we haven't been the ones applying for the grants. We see ourselves, we're a small volunteer organization who's enthusiastic, but we're going to be there supporting town administrators, supporting town planners or city planners in Clemson, supporting you, and also as much promotion and marketing and communication with the public, trying to be the liaison of communication between everybody, kind of keep the flag in the sand, saying, just keep the projects moving forward.
And leveraging the private and the corporate support when it comes to that, because we feel like we're sort of uniquely capable of doing that. And, you know, the other part of the central project, the grants that we're being applied for there, and I know that there are some water grants that are coming through for central, but there are some unique socioeconomic opportunities there where we have access to grant money in Central that wouldn't necessarily be available in Clemson because of what property, I guess it's just the
Something
economics
else to
there.
consider, you got ACOG, which is your urban funds, and GPAC is your rural funds. They're two separate entities with two separate grants.
Well, this was an
Depending on
ACOG.
how you fit into those, both of those are funding sources you have to look at. Because you have a certain demographics to qualify for each one, where you may not qualify for one, but you may find that you're doing a little section that's outside the city limits of Central, like that SLU, that you may find that there's funds available through that rural. Just make sure
Make
that
sure we look at both of them.
Yes.
Okay. Good point.
And Southern Wesleyan has been really helpful as well with putting us in touch with some of their funding opportunities and being able to use some of their dollars to leverage public dollars. So what we'd like to do is just follow up by eco-friendly email with you rather than blanket you in paper. And just, we can just shoot you an email, give you our contact information, and open the door to any additional
Suggestions and
conversations.
questions.
And if we can meet with a county road person or something else, you know, walk through, I mean, I'm sure the feasibility study will be self-explanatory for anybody who lives in Naps. I don't live in Naps. I couldn't even find my way to this building. But we feel like the information is there to really help your folks be informed about, you know, what we might be able to do to collaborate with them on any future paving projects.
Thank you all very much for having us.
Thank you.
Thank you very much for being
Appreciate
here.
it.
Great presentation.
Thank you.
Have to have a hard shirt on to ride on the back fence. Once I get built, just tell me.
No. I sport my learning.
So we're going to move our tour of the jail to next month. And I guess we need to enter into executive session now on our boards and commissions.
On the jail.
I need a motion.
Got a question here. On the jail, they started moving in the cell pod thingies that
The pre-manufactured sales, yes.
they already started, are they
They've
done?
been doing it for, gosh, a month or so now.
Is there a way to come watch them do some of that?
I'm not sure exactly how many they have left.
I just think that a ball in place. I got some pictures of them going in if you want to see.
Yeah, check it out. I heard that's pretty neat to see.
Okay.
Them doing that
Have they actually
stuff.
finished all of that?
Yeah, they had all of them. Well, they may be a couple on the front side where they're building the
That's right.
temporary holding, but
That's right.
the cells
One
are
pod
all.
left.
See if we can get one of the pods named after Wes.
As long as I don't ever have to
Make
say
that a motion, I'll second it.
Chairman, motion second for executive.
Yeah, I need to get a motion for a motion by Councilman Hendricks, second by Councilman Feemster. Any discussion? All those in favor, signify by raising your hand, and we'll go into executive session. Wait, I'm not. Okay, all right, I'll call us back into our regular session committee of the whole meeting. Our final item to discuss tonight is the 2018 accommodations tax recommendations, log number 102.
Mr. Chairman, we've got Mr. Ken Roper. He actually worked with the committee to come up with a report. We're going to turn it over to him and kind of go through everything.
Yes, members of council, I was a temporary called up from the minor leagues pinch hitter on this committee, just to the extent that I can serve as a liaison. You have the written report. I sent you information earlier to outline for you that these recommendations are brought to you because the statute requires that the committee receive the applications reviewed and then make recommendations. That you are empowered to do what you see fit with these recommendations. I will tell you that one issue the committee dealt with when it was doing its deliberations is they knew that generally they had around $105,000 to deal with, and so they made several decisions based on that number. Since they made their recommendations, we've learned from finance that there's actually available in the account $143,000. So there's $39,000 more available than what the committee knew. I think based on the recommendations, y'all can move forward and decide whether you want to keep that money in the reserve or use it for some of the applications that maybe weren't fully funded or that weren't funded at all. But you have a copy of the report in front of you, and I have all of the written applications that were received. Probably, I think the best way for us to move forward for tonight's point of view is to go to page 7 of the report, because there's kind of a master control log there that you can look at what the funding request was, who the entity was, and how much the committee recommended, to see if there's any adjustments that y'all think are appropriate.
So one thing that I want to add to this for us to consider going forward, and this would be, I guess, in another meeting, is we're still not getting back, we're getting back more information than we ever have, but it's still not, I don't think, complete. I mean,
Not to the data we'd like to see.
We went last year, I know exactly what we got. We went last year and asked specifically, if we give this money to these groups, we want them to come back showing how this increased heads and beds in the hotels.
well, and I would even like say to the point of, I mean, let's say, I don't know, I'll make something up, like the, let's call it a Southern Wesleyan Festival. And the Southern Wesleyan Festival asked for $10,000, and we spent it on this and this and this. It brought in this many people, and here's where they're from. I mean, more so than just, we need this money and we're going to do some advertising with it and we expect to get some people to come in.
Some of that information, because what the committee did based on your input from last June's meeting, that was a year ago June when that conversation happened, the committee added that information to the application. So a lot of that information is found in the underlying applications, which were in the Dropbox link, that they talk about how they arrived at the numbers. Some of the applicants used kind of math to come up with the numbers. Some said, no, we had 17 people. One guy was from Arizona. You know, some of them came back with specific feedback like that. So some of that data is there. Of course, you know, we can always improve and try to give you more and more of what you need, but it's not in the draft summary. The draft summary just kind of gives you a little overview of each project.
Well, and my other point on that, though, is same thing we're doing with recreation funding. So when somebody sends an application for the recreation funding, we go, no, you can't just ask for $40,000 because tell us what you're going to spend it on. Is it going for, you know, marketing? Is it going for buying hats and balls? And what is it going for? Same thing with I think with this, it needs to be kind of itemized. Here's what we spent our money for before, and here's the great return on investment we got. That's all we're looking for, I think, is a return on investment. We want to know that the tax dollars, for every dollar we give you, we're getting $2 back. That's for the taxpayer.
So I pulled one out at random. This is the Clemson Music Festival, who asked for $2,500, which the committee recommended full funding of that event because it's growing and it's becoming more regional. You'll see that's about a little over halfway down the Clemson Blues Festival, which is part of the greater Clemson Music Festival. In the application, we asked, have you received accommodations tax funding in years prior to this year? And they said yes. They received it in 2016, $2,500, and they said to promote musical festival. They didn't give back a lot of the detail that we might have wanted there, but we asked the question. So a lot of these applicants are you know, they're not giving us information, even though we know this is a good group and a good use of the money. So we're asking the question. Maybe we're not getting back a lot of that data that y'all are needing, and we'll just keep.
Well, I mean,
stressing
that's what I'm saying. This is something that we could.
I think what we've done in the past is we've given money to the same groups every year because it's a good group.
Yeah.
Or, you know, they've done this for 30 years. And I think the question we finally come to is the question is, well, I know they're a good group. I know they're nice people. But the question is, what are the results? You know, and like this one for, you know, God bless Andrew Pickens. I know this gravesite. I've seen this gravesite. I took a picture of this gravesite a week ago when I saw this. And I thought, $42,000? How many people are going to come to see that gravesite because it's got new brick on it versus the brick that's on there now?
I will say in defense of that one, and I don't have an
And they do
opinion.
have private funding for this coming as well.
And I don't know about that. I do know that they requested that amount, and they really had some specific things they want to do about that. I will say, and I guess my role here is not to advocate for or against any of these projects, but just to tell you that the committee, the ATAX committee, was very excited about the Andrew Pickens project, which is reflected in their funding recommendation.
It's Andrew Pickens, it's Pickens County. But
Right.
The question is that if we're going to be this across the board, everyone's all dealt the same. When you have one company that says, okay, we're going to bring 5,000 tourists in, we want 15,000. How many tourists has Andrew Pickens got to bring in to justify the same amount of spending?
I can tell you what the committee said about that, and it's not dispositive. Your opinion is what matters, not the committee's opinion. But since I'm speaking for them here to a certain extent tonight, I'll tell you that what they said was, this is a one-time funding request. It's the 150th anniversary. It would be a really good thing to do this one time, and that was why they were excited.
But you said they got private funds, I don't know how much.
I don't know.
The total's 42 grand for that, right? For everything.
Yeah.
So if they're getting funded, do they really need 42 grand? And why?
I know they're working on private funding on it because there's a lot of people interested in that particular, and that's a private, you know, that's a private church, Old Stone Church. I guess it's not a public facility.
That's a historical site, right?
It's a historical site, and his grave site is obviously a historical site.
Right.
Now, it's not caved in, falling down. The whole place needs work on it, not just his grave site, you know. So I thought, 42,000, the thing is, half the size of this table.
We're still about regrouting all the brick and everything, for each one of them.
I'll give you some, I thought about this with the Dacusville Fire, Dacusville Farm Days. And what they put in for, which is a fairly low amount. And they put in an application, they bring in 300 people. I know that's not the case. There's thousands of people come in there over that weekend. And so I got checking on it. 300 people are vendors and people that show in tractors. Has nothing to do with the amount of people that's actually coming to the show. And so I asked
Vendors count.
yeah.
Because they're coming from out of town, they're staying someplace.
300. We're not even talking about the thousands of people that come to that show. So
Right.
I asked them about that, and they were real conservative. And I said, well, we didn't want to estimate more than came. So what they did is have their ticket people this year. They said, well, how do we do that? I said, well, when you sell tickets, just ask where you're from. And so we should be getting back some real good information on that because they were going to make notations and they're going to give us that back.
Where you from, where'd you stay?
There's at least half of Pickens High went there.
So
Where are you from, where'd you stay?
I went, yeah.
We should be able to get data from hotels. That's one thing we talked about, was getting some cooperation from
During
hotels.
certain time periods, there,
Were y'all full this
Room
weekend?
vacancy.
If they weren't full and you had a big festival, then you ain't getting people spending the night, you know? And that's one of the things that I liked about that rowing program at Clemson is they can show you, we got 8,000 hotel rooms. Is that what it came out to be? It was astronomical because they got teams
Right.
for 2 months to come down there for that.
But this year, they did something different. They did some high-end magazine advertising. And I'm not sure how they can measure how.
They've been doing that advertising for several years on that rowing stuff.
Who you talking
That's who they get to come, is that they advertise in those collegiate magazines for rowers.
Now, look at this list. One thing I'd ask you guys, my peers, you guys to consider is looking at Holly Springs. They requested $7,000. There's some funds available. I'd love to be able to see those guys get some funds to keep that program going because it draws. And it's
How many is it drawn so far?
If
I
I
don't
could,
know numbers.
if I could ask, let me take my hat off as the liaison here, just as the attorney. Is that a motion you're making so that y'all?
I'd like to make a
amend?
motion that we consider giving Holly Springs some money for their center, the Holly Springs Center.
I'll second it for the purposes of discussion, but I'm not ready to vote on it yet because I think we need to look at it in everything in its entirety first.
Because look at the ones that didn't get money. Discovery
well,
Upstate,
yeah, but
Peter
we-
Garrison, Holly Springs, and Upstate Center for Arts. Those programs did not get money.
Right. No, I'm agreeing with you. I want to draw y'all's attention to the purpose of the accommodations tax is to attract or provide for tourism defined by state law as action and activities of people taking trips outside their home communities for any purpose except daily commuting to and from work. The South Carolina Department of Parks and Recreation Tourism uses a 50-mile rule of thumb for a distance traveled by tourism under this definition.
There
So,
needs to be a question on the application. How many
Well, it
tourists
said-
draw from outside of 50 miles?
It goes on to say, as further clarification, the definition of tourist, Pickens County Council directed that all applications for ATAX funding should include an estimate based on solid analysis projecting hotel room nights generated by each applicant. So,
So we could argue that some of these places don't do it.
well,
Exactly.
and
They're not
that's
getting a bump on the money.
and that's what I want to get to. I mean, I feel like I'm looking for y'all's opinions on this as well. I love the history and Appalachian culture and all that stuff that we've got going here. And any of these conversations, I don't think necessarily are saying that we're bashing that. But when you're talking about, like I said, like your point on the gravesite, I agree. I don't know how many heads and beds we're going to get from people coming to visit, even though I get that it's a one-time deal and it needs fixing up. But there may be other avenues for funding for that, which Wes opens up the door for those things. Like if Holly Springs is creating this program, which I think they are, but if it is ultimately going to become the place where the kids from Charleston are coming up here instead of while we're sending kids from here down there to go tromp around in the marshes, and they can send kids up here. If those programs are beginning to exist, then I would advocate for funding for Holly Springs because they're bringing people in from across the state to come use those facilities. But what I want us to be, and again, this is my opinion, so y'all can disagree with me. I think we should be careful of, well, I really like this because it's in my backyard. I really like this because I think this is a cool thing. If we go back to the core of what the ATAX committee is supposed to be recommending, then I think this opens up the door for us to take a look at some of the recommendations and maybe make some adjustments.
I wholeheartedly agree with what you're saying. And just to the point, my mom was on the Old Stone Church committee, and I told her, Mom, I ain't voting for this. But I think the point is that we as a council have a responsibility for these ATACs to go for just what you read. Outside of all the political friends and this and that, it's all about returning that money back
Return on investment
to where it came from. And so if we keep that as our focus as opposed to, well, this guy called me up and they're a really good buddy and they like me, and this is what happens. This is what's happened to this thing for years. That we just because, well, we know them and we're finally starting to push, and there's resistance because we're saying we want, as it said there, concrete information. Where can you show, this is how many heads and beds you're putting in there? Because that's the purpose of all this is, now, it's not a slush fund for us to hand out to people that want to have it because we like them, or it's a nice program, or we like to go there, or, you know, my mom's on this. It's about what you just read.
And I agree, and I think I don't want to fault, we need more beds for heads to fall in. I mean, I get that. But to your point, the Dacusville Farm Days, there are people coming from all over for that, and they kind of shortchange themselves in their requests. To your point, I don't know what Holly Springs said in their application. They decided no on it, but are they saying they're drawing in from people from...
The reason the committee said no on that application is because they don't think that the description of the School of Mountain Arts was tourism.
They don't think, or do they know that?
Well, they don't know that because they acknowledge that it's a brand-new program. So what they said was maybe they could come back in future years, but again, that's a decision. Y'all may have data that they didn't have. They didn't recommend funding, but that's not the final word. Y'all are the final word on that. The application talks about bringing in school children for the School of Mountain Arts from a 75-mile radius, which on one hand meets the 50-mile radius thumbnail, but on the other hand, there's no contemplation that right now these are going to be anything more than day trips.
Right.
In response to what you guys said about Hot Springs, not once did I mention it because it's in my backyard because somebody likes
No,
somebody. I
I'm-
didn't mention that. I don't want to be insinuated. That's the purpose.
I'm not trying-
The programs they offer, the programs that can draw people.
I wasn't trying to insinuate that at
That's
all.
the way it could have been.
Well, I apologize. No, because I'm on your side on this. I really am. I think they need to be funded. What I don't want us to do is to think about anything based on just because, like Councilman Whiter said, we're friends with them, we know them, because I'm friends with
the
them.
equation. Never did I mention it.
I didn't, and I'm not trying to imply.
That is what has happened.
You're right. I'm not trying to imply that at all. Well,
I'm talking about
completely
previous
opposite from that. I'm agreeing with you that I think that's something that we need to fund, which is why I seconded and want us to vote on
I
it.
guess it's a larger question. Can we get data from that for certain organizations to submit data? Like T.A. Garrison, they draw a boatload of people in there.
Yeah, T.A. Garrison, though, that was, the committee said on that one that they're asking for a capital improvement for an out-of-county facility.
Out of,
Well,
So they just kind of dropped that one.
Out of Pickens County.
it is a.
It's in Anderson County.
It's in Anderson County.
But their argument is they're
They're
using the hotels in Clemson, so they feel like they should get a portion of that money. That was the same argument I used on Clemson football weekends. I think we should tap into Anderson County and Oconee County
And
for their
apply.
tax money. I used the same argument, but
We didn't see any coming there yet.
okay, so how do y'all want to tackle this? I mean,
Well,
because
first of all, the people that's applying, sounds to me like they're not turning in specific information, is that right?
Some are doing better than others. That's fair
Well,
to say.
my feeling is that if you want the money, then you adhere to the rules.
And the application is plain as day, easy to understand.
It asks the
What it's
questions.
asking for.
Yeah, it asks the questions.
So if they don't meet those requirements,
Can't argue it then if they
We
don't
have
fill
a
it out
very
right.
specific line we have to follow here. And if we follow that line, we're never going to have a problem. Because
Right.
we can look back and say, I'm sorry, but if we go off of that line, then we open ourselves up to everyone saying, well, you did it for them, and you did it for them.
I've got a question
yeah.
about this money. Does it have to be to a not-for-profit organization?
There's nothing in the statute that says it has to be non-for-profit. I do know the committee for this portion. There's some of it, the 30% money has to go to those sorts of things, to
Right.
tourism promotion.
Tourism
But-
promotion.
Yes, and it's got to be entities that are set up for the purpose of tourism promotion. But that's the 30% money, that's not this money. This money that comes through the committee, I'll tell you that the committee looked at it and said, hey, this one application, sounds like a great program, it's wonderful, but that's just a business. It's just a business. And they got a great business model, but we shouldn't be spending tax.
Well,
So
and
the
that's-
committee said that.
That's what I'm asking about, because I'm assuming it's the one we're talking about the same one, but they're looking at putting on an event. Now, do have a business, but the business is going to host an event that is a sanctioned event, and they anticipate 80% are going to be, participation will be tourists, which means 80% of the people will have to have a place to stay, which is, Mr. Whitehurst, please don't let me down, heads in beds, right?
Consistency, yes.
So-
What were you looking at?
Easily gymnastics.
Easily gymnastics.
That's
No, I'm
fair.
just asking.
It's a fair question.
It's an honest question. I mean, they're putting on a, let's see, it's a U.S. I hate this stupid
If it puts heads in beds,
It's a sanctioned regional tournament. USAG sanctioned gymnastics meet.
See,
is that tourism?
When
Well,
you're bringing
I mean,
in 80% of the participants are from out of town, is that not tourism? By
You said that
definition.
about the World Series, you said about volleyball tournaments.
Okay,
you
so
said
World
about
Series is
Little-
on here.
Yeah.
About Little League,
the rowing competition.
The rowing
gymnastics.
But the difference
well,
is all those are not private companies. Is that the only difference? I'm just asking.
It's the only thing I can find.
That's one thing I'm fine. They're bringing people in to do an event, they're bringing people in to row, they're bringing people in to do baseball, they're bringing people in to do gymnastics. I don't know, the question is, if we do that, does it open the door for every business to stay
Well,
by bringing
yeah, I mean,
people in?
it's a legitimate question to ask. I'll tell you the committee's approach, and I guess that's the role I need to stick to on this. The committee's approach was, well, no, they're a for-profit business, let's move on to the nonprofits. They took the approach, and again, this is not dispositive, y'all
What
are
does
the
the law
decision makers.
say?
The law on this section just says that it's got to be for promotion of arts and culture, construction, maintenance of facilities, public facilities, tourism, shuttle services. It goes through the whole list. It doesn't say that a for-profit business is disqualified. But I'm just saying that the committee said, yeah, that's not what this fund is for.
But the law
The
doesn't
law
say.
doesn't say
Can
that.
we ask
So how much-
other counties what they're doing? Like, you know who has a bunch of tax money? Is Myrtle Beach.
Yeah.
They got
They're a little busy
gazillions
right now.
of dollars. I'm just saying.
Yeah.
But Myrtle Beach is actually doing pretty good right now.
Or
But
is-
my point
or
is
is-
can we ask around some of these, Charleston,
We can, absolutely.
and just kind of say, hey, have y'all ever spent it on a, and I think, I don't want to, it's a question because it could open floodgates, because then you start questioning, well, is government now picking winners and losers in the private sector?
Right.
That opens up a door of questions that we got to bounce around on.
So how many of those criteria they have to meet?
Well, there's no math, there's no rubric. It's what the committee was impressed by, and then what are y'all impressed by?
You get my question.
I get, it's a legitimate question. I think there's different angles to the question we got to ask. But it's certainly one I think we ought to ask.
I just, when we're, and I mean no disrespect to the grave side, I use that one, that's what we talked about earlier. No disrespect to it at all, but we're talking 42,000 for something that in reality probably isn't going to bring
How
a
many
single
days?
person in here to spend the night versus
Or to spend money in local businesses.
large tournament. Now, if it were to do a renovation at their facility where they're doing, teaching their classes, this, that, and the other, we're talking about a regional meet. I see that as a better investment of the
That's
money.
that's why I looked at that grave site. I said, there are other ways to fund this.
Well, let me ask you a question. Have we funded tax money to Southern Wesleyan?
We did some of the advertising money with them.
Did we?
When we did it in their magazine.
Here, right there's a copy of the cover.
To bring in,
Is that not it?
Oh,
and
is that
they
it?
did a whole
Okay.
thing on Pickens County.
So
And that was
is that
to bring,
that's the for-profit?
but it was advertised, well, it's a private school. I guess it's a.
Yeah, that's where I'm going at. I mean, if that Pandora's box has already been opened.
It's a legitimate question. Because what they were able to do with that was to help promote, now they did an advertisement for Pickens County, not for Southern Wesleyan.
No, I got you. Well, and
They didn't advertise come to Southern Wesleyan,
maybe that's
they
something
advertised
guideline.
come to Pickens County.
And I guess that's part of my question is, I mean, are they going to advertise their company here, or are they advertising their meat? Or is it to put things in place to be able to have the meat? You know what I'm saying? If it's not directly benefiting their bottom line of their company, but it's aimed at, the money is aimed at the physical meat that's going to bring in the people, I wouldn't give them money to dump in their company, but I would be interested in making sure the meat was successful.
Well, how about this? What if they took some of the money from the profit of the meat and donated it back to the local group? In other words, they could tie in some sort of, as they're doing their
I don't think
thing.
you can put stipulations
I'm
on
not
that.
saying that, I'm just
But if
saying.
that was part of the application. that would be
If I could, I just want to ask one question, and y'all may dismiss this, but is there a consensus on any number of these? Because a lot of these people are contacting us asking, when's the money coming? You know, so is there a consensus around some of these that we can move forward on? That may be a way to
Right.
break through the logjam a little bit.
It can,
I'm not ready to run it down.
can y'all look at it from a, I was gonna say, can you, if we look at these from a standpoint of being pure to what this says right here, as far as on the background of what we're supposed to be doing.
Right.
Then I see you've got a case certainly there. I think there's a definite case for Holly Springs. And I understand your point. We've got people that are waiting, but
If Holly Springs is bringing people in on a day basis right now, that's no nights in a hotel.
no. But I'm saying, well, okay. Again, is it pure to just nights in a hotel? That's what I want to be careful about, because it says
What's it say?
action and activities of people taking trips outside their home to community for any purpose except daily commuting.
And I will
So
say
where's
that
the money
this,
collected from? Where's the ATAX
it comes from hotel rooms.
Comes from
That's the
hotel.
only place it comes
That's
from.
the only place it comes from.
Yeah, but is everything on here
That's what it's supposed
contribute to
do.
that?
That's
Tourism-related activities under the state standard of analysis is 50-mile radius. So we as a county have pushed towards a standard of proving they actually stayed in a hotel, which is valid. That's valid.
Because that's what you're trying to do, is keep generating, so we have more of that money to help build that whole thing, so more people stay, so.
But if they drive beyond 50, does that not qualify whether they stay in a
That
hotel?
qualifies under state PRT guidelines.
If they
Park
drive beyond
recreation
50,
tourism.
whether or not they spend the night in a hotel?
Right.
Okay. Because restaurant taxes is not
They
contributed to
weren't.
A tax.
Well, the
That's-
restaurant taxes are another fund.
That's a whole nother fund.
Yeah, but it's the same concept, just a different fund.
So if they can prove that they got, if organizations can prove they got numbers coming beyond 50, then that would qualify
That's
by
right.
law.
Well, yes.
So what do you guys want to do? There's still a motion on the table that I've not wanted to call for a vote yet, based on seeing which direction we're going. But I'll still have to call for a vote since we've got a motion and a second.
I want more information on stuff. If they're saying, they did, here the committee said they weren't interested in doing it because they didn't say it demonstrated there was enough activity going on. I can't vote on it. And a lot of these are, you know,
Would it do any good to table the motion?
Yeah, can we do that? Table it to get data? If they can
so-
work out the data,
If
if
we
they can't
table
work
it,
out the
we
data,
force it to
say,
the
get it
next
next year.
What if we go get the data for you guys?
So-
if we can't reach out to these people and start gathering the data.
So are you making a motion to table it?
Make a motion, table it till we get further data.
Okay.
I'll second that.
table it is my correct understanding. Table it forces it to the next meeting. If it's not done then it's gone.
It's
Well,
gone.
you could make the motion just to remain in committee until you're
Yeah, make a
ready.
motion to remain in committee.
That's
How's
a
that?
separate motion.
I'll second that one.
All right, y'all are going to make me get schooled up on my rules here. So
Make a
You
motion.
withdraw your first motion?
I withdraw my first
And then you
motion.
got to second it. 'cause-
Make a,
I'll
yeah.
withdraw the second on
Okay.
that. First
Is that-
motion.
I'm good with it.
Whatever.
I'd like to make a
We're in a
motion.
committee meeting.
I was getting
We'll be
ready
all
to
right.
write stuff down. Go ahead.
I make a motion that we keep it in committee whether or not to contribute to the Holly Springs Center or some of these other organizations based on retention or obtaining for their data.
Okay, I'll second that one.
Any discussion on this?
We need to really make a point to this committee that when they come to these applications, they gotta have solid data, and a lot of it, and we won't have these postponed.
And I'm going to make a
And
point
that's not
that,
your fault, because you're just kind of stepping in.
no, I know.
No, I'll take it.
Is it possible for the committee to say, tell people to turn in applications? This is incomplete because you don't have data.
And I'm going to make the point because I mean, we're holding up other things like even county events that Mr. Pitts is over with
Can we approve those?
the Christmas festival at Hagen Mill. We actually have that additional dollars. I mean, so there was that we could move things around, or looking at 42 and moving that around. If we're going to vote to move this to the next meeting, then we can't keep kicking it down the road. We've got to.
Well, I guess that was what I'm sitting here questioning. Some of these, let's see, the farm days, has already come and gone, blah, blah, blah. We kind of know the impact. Councilman Hudson mentioned that. There was another one I saw in here that was one of those made sense projects. There's a couple of these projects that are make sense projects that obviously fit. Do we want to address those, the ones we have questions about, move on, or do you really want to just do them all at once? I guess that's my question.
Do you want to make a motion?
Well, I want everybody, I guess, to be able to discuss. I just want to know if I want a discussion period for that before we vote. So I want to know. I want to know. Do we want to discuss these that we feel good about, or do you want to do them all at one time? What's everybody's consensus?
Just discuss the ones we're sure about.
Councilman Walker, so you comfortable with that?
Are we sure about? We're asking for data we can't say we want data from you, but you're okay.
Yeah.
You didn't provide the data, but we like. If we're consistent with everybody, we need to have this data. This is what's required on the application. If you don't fill this out and can't prove it, then don't even bother.
I'm with you. That's fine.
Consistency is what saves us, I think.
Okay, so when I call for this vote at the next council meeting, I want your assurance that we're gonna.
As long as the data's there.
We're gonna pull it. Okay, all those in favor of, well, hold on.
He just said remain in committee. It was-
Well, no.
Holly Springs
I wanna-
was that. yeah.
Holly Springs remains in committee.
That's right.
I'd like to amend this motion. I'd like to amend it to, for our next council meeting so that we're not waiting an additional
So it'll be next
2
month.
weeks. Well, we don't, unless we have a special call meeting.
I'll second your
So we're
amendment to
going
your
to
motion.
discuss it during council.
Yeah.
When we get all the data. 'Cause
I
it
bring-
could get a very
A
long
lot of that
discussion.
data is in the applications. I'll put it in another format for y'all, but the
Something's
ones that
easier
we
to
don't,
assess and
yeah, the
can
ones that we don't,
download.
I'll
Yeah.
call them and bring that data back to you as well.
Is there ones that we specifically need to have funding on, right? Because the thing, we can get to a long meeting and
I know, that's what I'm worried about.
if we could just, if there's particular ones, just a thought, if there are particular ones that need to be addressed immediately, maybe it would be just like 2 or 3. That might be easier to discuss.
You mean here?
No.
There?
At the regular council session.
Because if it's so.
As opposed to going through every single one, we'd be there for,
But are there some that we can refer back to committee at our council meeting if we're unsure of?
We can do whatever we want.
Right.
Can we look at the time period, anything that is imminent or has passed are the ones we discuss, and any that we could kick out for 2 months, we kick back to the next committee, and we only discuss the ones that are imminent or past? That's more of it, but
Or,
that's what
I can give you that as a part of a report as well.
yeah.
because you got some people that are planning, well, November 15th. This is January.
The Ride to the Rocks
December.
next weekend.
most of them, some will have to be reimbursed.
Right, the Davisville Farm Days happen if you know,
Sooner
couple
than
weeks back.
back in June.
There's a lot.
For what Douglasville asked for,
$1,000.
$1,000, that's ridiculous. Based on other events, it's ridiculous.
Hey,
There's one that should have had a better shake.
It's just, I mean, if you go up there and look, either day, the place is packed.
now don't people spend the night there too?
Yeah, they can.
Vendors
We should tax them.
and people selling things.
I kid.
Over 300 just for that. Not counting all thousands of people came in.
But seriously, though, they slam their campers on like road tax.
Right. Okay, there's a motion on the table on the floor to move this to council meeting, and seconded by Councilman Bowers. All those in favor signify by raising your hand. That motion carries. So does that supersede the others?
Yes, it does.
All right. With that, gentlemen,
But
motion
you
to
can make a
adjourn.
request to put them in priorities, the ones we need immediately, so if we get bogged down, we can send them to committee. In other words, saying these are in the way we.
What
can
are
get
the
them.
top
See what we do
prioritize
about
them?
that. Yeah.
Yeah, that way, if we get bogged down, we can just.
Motion to
I
adjourn.
already said motion to adjourn. I'm waiting on
A
myself.
second, bro.
Motion to adjourn by Councilman Bowers, second by Councilman Hendricks. All those in favor? And we are adjourned.
That's the only
Thank you.
thing I saw.